What would it mean to your life if you could overcome unexplained chronic pain? And is it actually possible to heal it from the state of your mind? Well, hello and welcome back to Team Talk with me, Julia Pitsy-Kamey. Now, I don't feel this is the first time to this channel. I've been in the health, fitness, sports industry for well over 25 years, but what I specialise in is the mind and body connection. I'm absolutely fascinated with how the body responds to the things that the mind is influenced by in your external environment, and how that responds in your internal environment, particularly when it comes to pain, health and fitness. And what I've done over many years is actually help many people from overcoming phobias so they can get back to doing endurance running, such as 10Ks, half marathons, marathons. I've helped people overcome shoulder pain so they can get back to health and fitness that they always wanted and the body that they always wanted. I've also helped someone come off sleeping tablets and get a really great night's sleep. And also another athlete who had for a long time, since they were a child, was really suffering with a problem with their eyes, were constantly dry and they are constantly having to use eye drops. Also help them stop having to use those eye drops and actually get their eyes in a better condition. Now, this may seem all a little bit wild and all a little bit unbelievable, but today what I'm going to actually share with you is evidence this, show you how this is possible, how this can happen to us, why we're stuck in chronic pain without even realizing it. I'm going to share with you a little bit of research as well, and actually how, if you can tap in and harness the power of your subconscious mind, in 4 hours or less, you could be feeling a lot better than you are today. Now, why is this so important? Well, believe it or not, I think it's about 28 million, so about a quarter in the UK alone, suffer with chronic pain. Now, as we know, chronic pain can come in many different forms. It can come in a physical form, so in terms of if you injure yourself, or you're all suffering some sort of illness, disease, that's going to cause an obvious physical pain. But there is evidence for, and research has shown, that actually a lot of pain can come from an unexplained source. We don't know it's there. We don't know the reason it's there, but we are suffering. And there's actually a name for this. Some people call it primary pain, but that's actually a name. And it was named, the WHO actually gave it this name. It was called somatoform disorder. And what they found is that very often, some of these chronic pains, where they're uncoupled from traumas, be it an injury or some disease, can actually be caused by current, so present or past events that actually were traumatic, and they are still having some sort of psychological or emotional response to that. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that. But this is actually really devastating, because if you have a pain and you know the cause and you've got a prescription to resolve it, you stay calm, you deal with it and you move on, you get better and you get back to normal life. But when you don't know what the cause is, even when you've been out seeking advice, seeking the right help, and no one can find anything wrong, but you're in this state of constant pain, which can go on for not just weeks or months, but decades. For years, many people have had these issues and they can never recover. And there can be a whole host of reasons why this is going to happen. So what I'm going to explain, but I do think before I actually get into that is, and you do need to understand, to help you understand, is what's happening within the body, what processes are actually taking place that actually cause this. So you know it's not just coming out of my head. This isn't nonsense. This is actually science. It's been researched. And actually there's more and more research into this sort of physiological pain, psychosomatic pain. And I've actually popped a link to a couple of research papers that are actually fascinating. There's a whole host of them out there. The ones I've added into the description in this particular video is one on psychosomatic pain, which was written by and studied by a guy called, I think if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Aliverdi. And then there's a second paper, which is one I actually quote quite a lot because I think it's a really fascinating study, which was done through Leeds Beckett University Centre for Pain Research on physiological pain. And what that study is the effects of the psychological and the emotional effects on the manifestation of actual physical pain and prolonged physical pain. So they're really two interesting studies there. And actually recently I was listening to another channel and they were discussing this particular issue of how you can heal your body, and not just your body, but many different problems, many different challenges you're facing. in your life, but pain for me is a particular one because obviously as we get older and we reach those middle years, we become more susceptible to chronic pain and problems and health problems and disease if we're not healthy and fit and taking proactive and preventative measures. So this is why I'm bringing this channel. So I apologize if I repeat myself and things I've said before, but it is really, really, I think this is a really important subject, and with everything that's going on around us in our environment, especially currently, this can be continuing this problem for us, and I want to share with you what's actually going through you and how we get to this point where we just don't seem to be able to overcome the pain and what's keeping us stuck, and then we know exactly how to take the steps to move you forward. So what is the process that is going on, because remember, we don't want to stay in this state of pain, because it does affect things like your careers, your relationships, your independence, especially as you get older. And what you want to do is you want to be able to have that life that you always wanted, and you don't want it to stop just because you're getting a little bit older, and there's no reason why it actually should. And you using this or understanding this can help you get to the reason that perhaps you're in pain, and then you can start taking those steps, which puts you in a more positive, proactive state and getting back to all those things you love to do. So what is actually going on? What is the processes that are going into the body that are keeping you in this pain? Okay, so I'm going to try and make this as simple as possible for you, because it makes it easier for me, to be honest. If I make it simple, I'll do my best. There's a lot of things that are going on with the body. So what's going on? When you have a stressful situation, and I've talked about actually this before, the cumulative injury cycle, whether it's a physical or psychological. So you have the pain first, the trauma first, be it a physical, psychological, and emotional trauma first. What happens then? It causes a stress response. Now that stress response creates an inflammatory response in the brain. Okay, and what happens with that inflammatory response, which leads to further dysfunction and then into disease, because what happens with that stress response, chemical changes occur within how the cells function. Okay, and what that does, that leads to a whole cycle of events of release of hormones that end up suppressing the immune system. And when that immune system is suppressed, you're no longer able to heal as well or as quickly, and you become more susceptible to diseases. That's putting it in a nutshell very, very quickly. So once that happens, you're in that inflammatory response, you're then actually going to be causing further dysfunction, because you're not going to be using your body as well because you are in pain, so more inflammation occurs, and therefore you get more disease and more problems occurring, which leads to further trauma, and you keep going in this cycle. So the aim is to actually disconnect, a neurological disconnection between that state of when the trauma happened and cutting it before you get into a stress response. Now, how can this happen? Well, in our life, we go through all sorts of different things, and we've all at some point had traumas and stresses. And for the most people, you actually overcome it, you work through it, you get back to normal life, everything settles down, the inflammatory response will settle down, you'll get back to normal and move on. But for some, and it's considered that actually the WHO did say that it's anything up to about 20% of people suffer with this sort of somatoform disorder, this psychological, physiological pain. So it's a significant amount of people are suffering with that. So if you think about that, quarter of UK society alone, let alone in the rest of the world, but maybe up to 20% of that could be this, psychosomatic pain. So how does it get there? Well, we all go through traumas, and if you think of your brain and your mind working together like a computer, so think of your computer out in front of you, laptop, whatever it may be, your device, whatever it may be, and it's storing in there everything over your life, all the data, all the movies, all the pictures, all the documents, everything is in there. And you know what happens with a computer, sometimes it can get a bit slow. You've got too much stuff going on there and it can get a bit slow. Those times you're searching for a particular document, you've done it, it's there, and it takes forever to find it. And all this other stuff is coming up in its place when you're looking for it, but it's never the stuff you want. You start getting frustrated and tense and maybe angry because you can't find it and you're under pressure. All this. So imagine it's like that. Now the brain can only cope with a certain amount of information at a time, and it brings out what it needs to help you cope with that particular situation. Now what they found, with studies, is particularly when studying people with PTSD, for instance, and when they're having an episode, that there's a part in the brain when they were scanning that lights up, which is what they call Brodmann's area 19, which is like the visual cortex. So it's where you're seeing all your images and your movies or whatever of your life or whatever experiences you've had. So through that visual cortex. And what happens is when that fires up, it fires up the small brain, the cerebellum, and that triggers the amygdala. And when the amygdala fires up, you go into fight or flight mode. And it's this point that what they call is an emotional memory images stay stuck there. Okay, and it's frozen there, and it can stay there for years, decades even, when it's not dealt with. So very often when you're dealing with a situation, a stressful situation, and you don't know why you're having this stressful situation, you don't know why you're in this pain, there is evidence that it could be linked to a previous event, past event, or maybe in some cases a present, but more than likely it very often is a past event, but you don't understand the connection because it happened such a long time ago, and it has to take back those stages. So in terms of how it's creating that pain is through a series of processes that release hormones. So for instance, if you think about hormone release, you have a stressful situation, your amygdala's fired up. What it does, it starts a process of releasing corticotropic hormones that then triggers the pituitary to release more hormones called adrenocorticotropic hormones. This then releases cortisol from the adrenals, and the adrenals are called the glands of stress. They help control hormone levels to help you deal with the right amount of stress by that release of hormone. Very often cortisol is one of the hormones. And what happens is when you're in a stressful situation, and particularly if it's a prolonged stressful situation, which if someone's having chronic pain over decades, it is a prolonged stressful situation, this hormone release is continuing all the time, and these adrenals become very depleted. And this suppresses the immune system. So at this point, you're being open more inflammation, more pain, more disease, and your immune system is getting lower and lower. And this can actually lead, they've seen, particularly with things like if you're suffering with insomnia, chronic fatigue situation, depression, anxiety, to more sort of serious illnesses. Even it can affect, as I've said before in the past, and you'll notice over my videos, of things like if you're having problem gaining muscle or losing weight, sex drive, all these things can be deeply affected. So the key here is to understand where this emotional memory image started from, and it's playing out in front of you very much like your computer screen is right out in front of you. Imagine it's like a holographic space in front of you. You can't see it, but it's all that information as you're struggling to deal with the situation in front of you, but you can't find the relevant or the important stuff that is going to help you deal with it in a practical, rational way. And the key to remember also is when you're in fight or flight mode, the blood supply to the brain is decreased. So this is where you also can't concentrate, and you can't focus, and you can't think as you normally would. So things become even more stressful. So the key is to communicating and breaking down those barriers and upgrading your beliefs and values about your ability to deal with the situation that's in front of you, and interrupting that neurological connection to your past event and what's currently going on, and being able to adapt and change and work with this emotional memory image to actually help you overcome. Because once that neurological connection is gone, then your stress response reduces, inflammation reduces, and in time the pain response reduces. And that is the key really to overcoming chronic pain and why we're staying in a situation of chronic pain. So how on earth are we going to be able to get through this on our own? I mean, it is a challenge if you're just working with yourself, because you have to be very honest and you have to really give yourself time to sit and really think about the situation you're in and what are the reasons you're finding it difficult to cope, and really take time, because you do need that time to access those files that are in there that have the resolution for you. They can solve the problem for you. It's just that you're getting yourself into a stressed out state about it potentially, and it's you having to go back through your life, through those files, throw out some of the files you don't need to get to the perfect file with that little, that copy, that message, that solution for you that is in there that's going to solve all your problems. But very often we have to go back to past events, and it's those past events that are keeping us locked in this chronic pain, and they're going on a below conscious level, because remember, 95% of our thought is subconscious, 5% is conscious. So if that 95% is very negative in relation to an event or a problem that's going on in your life at this point, then more than likely it's been around for a very long time, but it's just got lost in the process. And it's digging into those files and looking back into your history to find out why it is in this capacity you are having a stress response. And it does take a little bit of time, and you do have to be patient with yourself. So what if you are going through this problem and you don't know where to start? Well, as I always say, it takes a bit of time, have a bit of a self-evaluation, and be really honest with yourself. And first question that I always like to ask is, what does this problem mean to you? It's a really great question. What does it mean to you? Is it something that actually you can actually think it's actually some benefit in some way? Because maybe you're getting out of doing something that you really didn't want to do, but you didn't feel right talking about it, or letting someone down, or those kinds of reasons can also be there. Is it a fear that maybe your life will change and you may lose people from your life? Is it a fear that you might fail, it might all go wrong and you'll be let down even further? There are so many different issues. So first of all, I would start by asking you what that problem means to you, and take some time. But if you're interested to find out a little more, you can always hop along to teamclinicservices.com and book yourself a free discovery call and see if it is something that you could be potentially suffering with, because it really is really, really important. And as I say, this video that I said earlier, I don't think I actually mentioned it. I think I went straight on to what I was trying to say. The channel is from Mark Hyman, Dr. Mark Hyman. And there was a video on there where he was actually interviewing Joe Dispenza, and he was talking about, as I said earlier, about healing the body, healing the mind. So I really do advise you pop over there. I've popped the link in the description as well. So you're more than welcome to go over there and check that out. I think that is a really fascinating study. And we know Joe Dispenza has done an awful lot of research into that, but there is so much stuff out there you can look up for yourself. But yeah, so the first step for me is just start evaluating what it is and what that pain means to you, and what it is you actually want to achieve, and could it actually be really possible? Because I 100% believe it is. You just need to learn to, as I say, work with this emotional memory images that you've got, and work through it and change your beliefs and values around it. Once you change your beliefs and values, the fear dissipates and the stress response dissipates, and you can actually move forward. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is one way that perhaps many of us can start overcoming chronic pain. I hope this has helped create a better understanding of where you may be in this, if you're suffering with this challenge, and I look forward to seeing you next time here on Team Talk. Thank you.